Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Catechumens Depart. I'm Eric Anderson.
I'm Father Mark Kozak from the Assumption of the Holy Virgin Mary Church in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where it is not raining and it is not snowing.
Hey, all right. Well, speaking of that, sorry that we missed you guys last week. We had some internet funkiness here, which I thought was due to snow and sleet and ice and ick, and it turns out was like due to a firmware update or something that our modem needed, which Kim discovered. So in any case, that's why we didn't join you last week. Sorry about that. I was going to record a little oops.
It's not because we don't love you.
No, we still love you. We were just defeated by the internet. Maybe that's I'm just going to write a book called Defeated by the Internet.
I'll write the next 2 volumes on it.
Mm-hmm. And here we are on the internet, whatever that even means. We're peering at you through the void.
There's Eric.
Hey, there's Father Mark.
Hey.
All right. So this time we wanted to talk about something that I thought you, Father Mark, might have a bit of insight into. We want to talk about God and guns.
Oh, boy.
Sort of broadly, maybe starting at the personal level and moving upward. I don't know if we'll get it in one show or maybe a couple. But like, how do we as Christians sort of like look at self-defense or violence or these types of things? You were in the military for many years in the unarmed services for you, I know.
Yeah, we were chaplains are the only unarmed people in the military.
Yeah.
They're not even permitted to carry a sword in dress uniform.
Nice. And so that's like an interesting spot to occupy. I was talking to my priest here, Father Ephraim, and I said, what do you think about, like, of course, like there are a lot of gun owners around here. There are a lot of gun owners in the States and these types of things. And I was like, well, what if somebody comes plowing into my house and goes after my wife? Am I supposed to blow them away or not? Right? And I've never been able to really come up with a good answer for that, for myself at least. Where would you kind of, at least starting there, like where do we begin to look at these types of things, these types of questions?
Well, we would ask when I was in chaplain school, 8.5 fun-filled weeks at that time in Newport, Rhode Island in the summer. Oh my!
Hey, that sounds great.
We would ask ourselves interesting questions like that, and one of them was, and this was supported by many of the Protestant evangelicals and other Protestants, was the enemy is coming over the hill. You're in your bunker, and your religious program specialist, the enlisted person that works for you, has died, as have all the Marines around you, or you're protecting wounded Marines. What do you do? There's a weapon right up in front of you. What do you do?
Yeah.
So for me, the choice is either I defend my Marines and my RP and use a weapon against another human being and automatically I'm defrocked, or
get blown away. Yeah.
So I would probably pick the first one.
Yeah.
So,
and
now is that the right answer or not? We can argue about that until until the sun shines. Another example, and this is a little blurred from this, is this was also from the more militant guys. And some of these guys went to Desert Shield, Desert Storm, Iraqi War, Afghanistan War, and they wore weapons, which is against the Geneva Convention and against military law.
So but these guys, they didn't get canned.
Well, nobody, no one went after some of these guys. So some of these guys were mavericks in the bad sense. That they thought that they were out there, they were going to, lead their men and, to victory and everything else. And that's not what a chaplain's job is.
Not in my understanding.
In fact, when Marines go out with chaplains, they purposely, it's a good thing and a bad thing, but the Marines will protect their chaplain. They'll protect their corpsmen because they're not Marines, but they work with Marines. They wear the same uniform and everything else, but they do unique things with the unit that no one else can do.
Yeah.
So they're very protective of chaplains and corpsmen and docs and so on. But the story is, and this is an old chestnut, is you're sitting in your office on your ship, and Seaman Smith walks in and says, "In 3.5 minutes, sir, a bomb is going to blow up on the ship, and there's nothing you can do about it because we're having a confidential conversation." So what do you do? Well, the Protestants in mass, 99% of them, said you go and you break confidentiality and you call the executive officer and find out where the bomb is and everything else. My experience in dealing with suicidal people and dealing with people that are super anxious and super confused is to not do something physical with them, but I have thrown people out of my office because they were being bad, number one, and number two, there wasn't anything else to talk about. So the answer to the bomb question is you pick up Seaman Smith by the scruff of his neck and hold him out like this, and basically he's going to tell you where the bomb is because you've messed with the chaplain. Bad news. Yeah. I'm not breaking his confidentiality, just as I did not break confidentiality with the 500 plus people that I sent to and walked with to medical about their suicidal ideations or attempts. I didn't break anyone's confidentiality, but I would get up from my desk and say, let's, you're suicidal and we're going to the doctor now. And every one of them said, yes, sir. So,
yeah,
now are those Christian things to do? Probably not, but they're gray area things when you're protecting another. And when you talk about the military, a lot of people talk about the military, as many of you know from, many is a big word for our fans, but all of you know.
5 on a good day.
I spent 8 years as a substitute school teacher after I retired from the military. And when my students would find out, I would tell some of them that I was in the military, the first thing they asked me was whether I killed anybody.
Yeah.
And I told them, no, I didn't, because I was a chaplain and I wasn't permitted to have a weapon.
Did that blow their minds? They're like, what?
It confused them to the utmost degree.
Yeah.
So also, why be in the military?
Yeah, that's says every 10-year-old boy. Also, by the way, for those of you viewers who have not been in the military, that's a terrible thing to ask a former service person. Kim has been asked that in polite company by people who should know better, and she's just,
oh yeah, I mean, relatives, friends, it's
What if the answer is yes to that? Like, what? So don't ask that
then how do you
question.
want to, then how do you want to talk about that? There's a whole thing with that.
Yeah.
So the military's reputation among many people, most people, is that they're there to kill people and spend much too much money, and they're the people that own the $4,000 toilet seat. And this is what Congress thinks that of the military. And this is what many people in Congress, because there are only 21% of the people in Congress were in the military, have an understanding of what military does. The first thing the military does is to defend this country. Mm-hmm. And the story about the bunker and the story about the suicidal guy are about defense.
Yeah.
That's what it's about. It may seem like it's offense. It's not about offense. It's about defense.
Yeah.
And it's about defending someone else and making a moral decision that is gray. Is everything for God or against God? Yes, it is. But I would feel better as a human being that I protected somebody else and have to give up my position as a chaplain and as a priest.
Mm-hmm.
Ideally,
yeah,
that's how I would feel. So you expand that to the 1.1 million people who are in the active duty reserves and National Guard, and you think about the 5,000 plus who are sitting in Washington and other capital cities and everything else, and you have on one extreme side, boo hiss, tomatoes, warmongers, the way people treated the soldiers and sailors and Marines when they came back from Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
And you have on the other side, boo hiss, because you're fighting us, who are attacking the Capitol or who are doing other crazy things with weapons.
Mm-hmm.
We'll talk about weapons in a few minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So the National Guard's job is to hold order under the orders of the state governor in a particular state, unless they're asked to go somewhere else. And that's when the federal, that's when the Pentagon gets involved with where they go and so on. DC has its own National Guard too. It functions as a state in that way. It's not very big. Mm-hmm. It's very small. Delaware is very small too, very small population areas.
Yeah.
But the Delaware National Guard has deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan hundreds and hundreds of times since the war started there. Yeah. So I had a young hospital corpsman ask me a question when the Iraqi war started. We were about 22 kilometers off the coast of Iraq, and we saw the first rockets go off and everything else when the war started and so on. And the first thing he asked was, am I going to be okay? Yeah, are we going to be okay, sir?
Yeah.
And the second thing he asked was, why are we sort of here? Well, unfortunately, I had not been to war and hadn't gotten to the logical pastoral way of dealing with was to answer the first question first. Duh. So, and the answer to the first question was, we're 894 feet long. We're painted white with a 92-foot red X on us. Mm-hmm. There are a couple submarines around here. There are other ships around here, and the Iraqi Navy probably doesn't exist anymore. It didn't. It was gone.
Yeah.
So we're going to be okay here. That's the question I should have answered. But instead, I got into oil and the history of Iraq and Saudi Arabia and Kuwait and the Brits and the French and the Americans and all this other stuff.
So you made him feel okay by putting him to sleep, is what you're saying.
And as this poor kid, his eyes were going around in different directions, and it's like, oh, geez. So I realized what I had done, and the job of our ship was to take care of people,
right?
And that included everyone, which meant Iraqi civilians that came on board that were wounded, and even Iraqi prisoner of war. We had 150 of them come aboard our ship and were taken care of by our doctors and nurses and so on. So that was our job under the Geneva Convention and under the rules of war and under the direct command of the Fifth Fleet of the United States Navy. So we weren't out there to shoot and kill anybody.
Right.
When an aircraft carrier group goes out, you have an aircraft carrier, which is a floating airport with 89 airplanes and up to 10 helicopters with weapons that we cannot discuss publicly on it because no one else wants to discuss them and they're not supposed to be talking about them anyway. And 14 other ships that are there to protect the aircraft carrier. And when it goes out, it is a piece of American diplomacy.
Mm-hmm.
Because the moment the group leaves port, they're the 18th biggest Navy in the world.
Mm.
So it's a huge piece of diplomacy that we go into a city like, Naples, Italy, or Trieste, Italy, or where we went on the hospital ship to the Canary Islands and all these things. And, why are we wasting money and time doing that? Well, these are for diplomatic, political reasons.
Okay.
To show not only the power of the United States, but also that, we're here,
mm-hmm.
And we have a stake in an important stake in how to keep sea lanes open, to have the world hopefully work properly every once in a while. 5 minutes every century would be nice, and so on. So that's what, and a carrier group may never fire a shot.
Mm-hmm.
Our ship would only fire a shot if something came close enough to it. And that is only because the USS Cole had been shot and almost sunk. And I knew some of their survivors because they were at the hospital where I was assigned to.
Oh, okay.
And the Cole had been shot up near, little country, bad politics, Saudis don't, Yemen.
Yemen. Okay.
So off the coast of Yemen.
Okay.
Yeah, Yemen. So if anything got within a certain distance of any American ship, the ship would shoot them down.
Yeah.
Because that's what happened to the Cole is someone rammed the ship with explosives and blew a big hole and killed hundreds of people.
Mm-hmm.
So that wasn't going to happen again. But otherwise, we were there to take on patients, which we did, do all kinds of amazing operations. We had 12 operating rooms and so on and so on and so on. That's what we did. I've been with some groups of people that do other things. Coast Guard that does many, many things. Naval training, because the military is very interested in training their people and making sure that they know what their job is and what the contingencies are if something were to happen. Lack of training can be a very large problem, especially among groups of human beings. Because if you're not trained to work together, then you have a problem.
As we can see sometimes in liturgy or whatever too,
Well, yeah, you look at a liturgy and the idea of it, the way I look at a liturgy is that I sort of look at, we had a bunch of people in church on last Sunday, and I had all these threads. And the main threads that I work with are the deacon, the subdeacon, the altar servers, the choir director, the reader. Those are the main threads that I work with. But everybody is a part of this, so there are threads there too. So my job is to keep all of those threads together, and to move that towards the kingdom of heaven. That's what my job is not to lose a thread, not to have a thread get confused, not to and so on.
Yeah.
So that's what my job is as the priest, and if the bishop was there, that would be his job. The deacon's job is to take care of the altar, is to take care of the gifts, is to take care of the priest, to make sure that he's not doing anything crazy, and so on. Everybody has a job, has a function, which defines clergy in the Orthodox Church, not necessarily education, not holiness, not any other things that we would think of coming from a different mentality, but it's a matter of function. And my function is to do that and represent the bishop. Once the bishop comes in, I used to say to people, when the bishop comes in, he hasn't unfortunately been around for a year and a half. He'll be here hopefully this Holy Week. When the bishop walks in, everything that I do stops.
Yeah.
I can't bless anyone. I mean, I could talk to people and stuff, but my liturgical function ends.
Yeah. Because technically the presbyter is just the representative of
I'm just the representative of the bishop.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I am.
Yeah.
Whereas in the case of the deacon's function goes up some, because he does more, because there's more to do with the bishop, and the bishop has more needs that need to be done, and so on and so forth. And even the liturgy is a little bit longer with the deacon and the bishop being there, and so on. So it's a matter of function. Well, it works that way somewhat in the military. Certain people function to do certain things. So in my case as a chaplain, I'll give you the old 35-year-old way of describing a chaplain. Chaplain, number one, is there to take care of their particular people and their particular faith group.
Yeah.
And in the case of Orthodoxy, this usually means if I'm on a 2 to 3 year tour on shore duty, it takes me over a year to find the Orthodox people, because they're all hiding somewhere. They're under lists of things. They didn't know there were any Orthodox priests in the Navy. Oh, are you Greek? And so on and so forth. Even though the plan of the day, which is the schedule for the day, has Orthodox on every Sunday has Orthodox Divine Liturgy on it, they didn't read that because they're like other people that don't read the parish bulletin. So on shore duty, that's the first thing and sea duty too. It's a little bit different at sea, because then you can trace someone down, even on an aircraft carrier. Ours was one of the smaller ones, one of the older ones. But remember, we were 1,051 and a half feet away from where we needed to be.
Yeah.
So you can find people.
Yeah.
And
it's an enclosed space,
and really make them make them feel bad about not coming to church. It's fun. No, it's not fun, but it's needed. The second thing a chaplain does, and this is something that's really misunderstood by many, many people outside the church, and especially the people between the ages of 40 to 80, is they watch the Mass too many times. And they think that every chaplain is like Father Mulcahy and does all the services that other services do. That's not my job.
Right.
My job is to provide for those services. So if we can't get a rabbi to come on board, or an imam, or a Protestant minister, or a Roman Catholic priest, then the military will train that person to do military things under a chaplain, to work with religious things. And then the church will train them to do liturgical things. So they become lay leaders of their particular groups. So on my last ship, we had 28 divine services every week. One was done by me, one was done by the Roman Catholic priest, and the other 26 were done by lay leaders.
Oh, okay. Nice.
So we trained them so they could do the Lutheran service and do the Jewish service and we had 2 or 3 Islamic services, especially after we got the POWs and the civilians on board. We had all kinds of stuff going on.
Mm-hmm.
So, but my job wasn't to do all those things. My job was to provide for all those things because according to the Constitution, we're supposed to do that.
Mm-hmm.
The third thing a chaplain does is they do what our oath says, which is the same oath that the president says, the vice president, and everybody in the military says. I state your name, will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestics, and so on.
Yeah.
That's a real oath. And you say at the end of it, so help me God, which makes it a binding oath with God. So this is no joke. The oath is no joke. It's not something to be messed with. It's not it's not a gray area. It's black and white. Either you're going to do the oath or you're not. If you're not going to do the oath, you need to leave.
Mm-hmm.
And since 1975, it's been an all volunteer military. So too bad, so sad. If you don't want to be here, there are ways of getting out. Not pleasant ways of getting out, but there are ways of getting out.
Yeah.
And then the last thing, which often was the most interesting, is that the chaplain has a unique relationship with every person in a particular command, because he's the only person that has total confidentiality. Well, you might say, well, what about the lawyer? What about the doctor? What about the Indian giver? What about this? What about that? Well, guess what? All those people don't have confidentiality.
Mm-hmm.
The lawyer writes notes down about what you're telling him or her, and they go to the commanding officer. Those notes belong to the Navy. Your medical record, people write notes in that. I can write notes in your medical record if I come to see you.
Yeah.
That belongs to the Navy. That doesn't belong to you.
Yeah.
It belongs to the United States Navy. And it goes to the senior medical officer who's in charge of it. So I had an interesting conversation one time when I was on my first ship. I walked in, I needed to look at someone's medical record because I thought that they had some latent psychological problems and a couple of other problems. I needed to look at something in their medical record, and the corpsman said, "You can't do that, sir." And I went, "This is my job."
Yeah.
This is when I was a lieutenant, when I was in 03. I'm a lieutenant. I'm the chaplain on the ship. I can look at any one of these records that I want to.
Yeah. It's also your job to never, ever speak of any of it to anybody like else.
No, and I'm not talking to you about somebody else's record, nor would I talk to anyone else. So no one breaks confidentiality.
Yeah.
So that includes the unique relationship to the commanding officer, which is really the last thing that we do, because we are the commanding officer's experts on religious, moral, and ethical issues.
Mm-hmm.
So my last commanding officer and I had served aboard that aircraft carrier I was telling you about 20 years before, when he was a young lieutenant commander and I was a young lieutenant. And we sort of knew each other and everything. And I had to explain this to him because I said, "Sir, honestly, do you want me with eyesight that you don't even want to think about, being colorblind, get in your $52 million airplane and fly it?" And he said, "No, chaplain, that's not a good idea." That's right. I said, "Then quit asking the lawyer religious questions."
Mm-hmm.
Because the lawyer only knows the law about those things. He doesn't know how things work.
Yeah.
And I will tell you how it works in the military. And I also will give you 20 years of experience of working through various interesting things on how religion works in the military, to the point of a senior officer sitting there with a junior enlisted person banging their Bible on the table, telling them how they should be reading this and following the word of God. That is against the Constitution of the United States of America.
Yeah.
I had to go. I was ordered by my superior to go to this guy and basically read him the riot act.
Like, hey, guy.
And say, look,
yeah,
this is no.
Right.
It won't happen again.
Yeah.
Because I worked for the two-star admiral. I was his chaplain. You know, I had the influence to make this other officer understand what I was talking about. And that relationship, you know, remains with the chaplain because they're assigned in the Marine Corps, Coast Guard, Navy, Army, they're assigned to units. In most of the Air Force, they are too, but Air Force has lots of bases and everything too. So there's lots of base stuff. So it's an interesting job. It's you learn a lot about people. You learn a lot about people in pressure cooker situations. Some will come up to talk to you about killing people and, you know, and doing all that. So we say, you know, okay, well, let's talk about this.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one extreme is I had many suicidal people, real suicidal people and faux suicidal people. And one young Marine came in to see me one day, and it was in the summer in Camp Lejeune, which is a 250 square mile swamp. And came in and he had tattooed on his forearms, kill, kill, kill. So we talked for a little while, and I realized that he was serious about the kill thing, and he was homicidal. He was homicidal and had some various mental difficulties. Mm-hmm. So we got him to go and see the doc. Mm-hmm. Another one had written in his notebook that he kept with him all the time. How he felt about himself, how he felt about the Marine Corps. He was working with the Air Force because he was working with dogs, and dogs are only run by the Air Force. His sergeant asked to look at this, and he got a hold of this journal, and we looked through it, and the whole thing was one continuous suicidal ideation. He was on the edge of killing himself. So when we meet that, you know, there's something immediate that has to be done. And it's part of the chaplain's job to be a part of that. And that includes things like sexual harassment, rape, many things that the chaplain has his or her, depending on what faith group they belong to, a hand in. So it can be quite interesting. Getting back to, did you kill anybody? I got some sad news for young people and older people. Not everybody in the military wants to kill people.
Okay. Right. Yeah.
That's not, that's just not, you know. Now, everybody in the military, as far as I know, doesn't want to be killed. So,
by and large, yes. Yeah.
So I spent 2 years as the senior chaplain for the School of Infantry for the Marine Corps on the East Coast, which trains all Marines to be infantrymen after they graduate from boot camp. And I learned a lot about what killing was about from the officers and the senior enlisted that were training these men and later women to be infantrymen with Marines. And they're interested in staying alive. They're interested in their platoon, which is the smallest group of people that they have, 8.
Yeah.
They're interested in their company, and they might not have a lot of political views. Nor can they express them to anybody in the press because that's against the Uniform Code of Military Justice.
Yeah.
But they're not there to kill someone. They're to follow orders, the right orders. Okay, because there are wrong orders. There are situations when you have to tell a superior, sir, respectfully, and you have to take the consequences of this. Respectfully, I cannot follow through this order. This is an illegal order. And you might have just ended your career in the military by doing that. But you're alive, number one. Number two, you did the right thing.
Hmm.
So doing the right thing is what it's all about.
Yeah.
So excuse me. So not everybody in the military is a homicidal maniac. No.
Right. Right.
And the people in the military and veterans usually 99% of the time usually frown on people that the military wannabes, you know, that those groups of people, because some of them may be veterans, and many of those veterans unfortunately may have had trouble in the military, might have only spent less than 2 years and have a bad conduct discharge, also known as the big chicken dinner. They didn't understand what discipline was. They didn't understand what following their oath was. They didn't understand what following lawful orders and unlawful orders are. They didn't go to any training, because I went to training on sexual harassment prevention, suicide prevention, adjustment disorder prevention, every kind of prevention you can think of. And I ended up teaching most of them by the time I left. And there's training every moment, you know, in the military. And people need to understand what that training is for. It's to defend our country.
Yeah.
The reserves are there to be in reserve.
Right.
So they train once a week and 2 weeks out of the summer. If you want to be a reserve chaplain, and if you're still in school, you can train 3 months out of the summer and get commissioned as an officer and train those 3 months and then go back to school. The National Guard, as I said, belongs to each state.
Right.
Each governor is the person that's in charge of their National Guard. So there'll be all kinds of words that will fly around among the press and politicians and others who should know better about all those soldiers going out to the ship to do this. Well, not a lot of soldiers go out to ships. Sailors go out to ships. Those soldiers should be knowing what they should be doing. Well, some of them are National Guardsmen or reservists who have spent 5 minutes in the military. Well, actually, they've spent more than that. They've gone to boot camp. That's some of them.
Yeah.
Some of the guys and gals that we saw in Washington. They have weapons training and so forth and so on. They respect what a weapon is. A military member cannot bring a weapon on board unless you're in the line of duty on board any station or any ship. So not everybody in the military carries around a 9mm or a M16 because that's against military regulations.
Right.
So it's a tool that you are trained to work with. I wasn't trained to work with,
but the average
everybody else is.
Everybody else is. So,
yeah. So that should answer a number of questions. Sorry, I ran with that. Sorry about that. Anyway, questions.
No, see, we're just gonna have to call this episode "War Stories."
I have in the Navy they're called sea stories, but I have war stories too. But a sea story often is true, but sometimes not.
Sometimes it's mermaids, which may be true too. Who knows?
That's right. They could have been those singing mermaids. Yeah, you never know.
We should let people go. We're way over time.
I'm sorry. Forgive me, everybody. I went into. I don't get a lot of time to talk about this anymore. So.
No, it's good, and I think that it helps people understand, especially like where your positions come from, and like where that peculiar place that you're speaking from. In between the church and the imperium, sort of.
Yeah, I understand how government works because I worked for the government, and I still carry an ID card that says that I work for the government.
Yeah.
And I was telling the bishop or somebody today, I talked to so many people today about other things, about COVID shots.
Yeah.
And I said, well, the VA hospital gave me a call and said, get down here and get your COVID shot. That I get my medical care from the VA. So I went down and got COVID shot number 1, waited 3 weeks, got number 2. Am I in the same categories as other people in regular? No, because that's not how the VA was working. The VA has a given number of extra shots every day, and they will administer shots every day. And they have a group of people who are waiting to get one of those shots, and that just happens to be me. So so military medicine worked that way too. If they called you to come down, that means you went down.
Mm-hmm.
And if I called someone to my office, I only called somebody to my office if they were in deep trouble.
Yeah.
And they were going before the commanding officer or someone with sufficient seniority that, this was bad, or somebody in their family died. And I made that clear in my indoctrination classes that I had with folks that came in. Said, otherwise, I will not call you to my office. You can come to my office anytime.
Yeah, but you don't want to be called.
But you don't want to be called to the chaplain's office.
No. So take note, parishioners.
If you called to see me, no,
if you get called, no.
I give you a call. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
All right. Well, let's wrap up there. We'll see where we go next week. I'm not sure.
Okay.
But we'll discover.
Okay. Sorry.
Oh no, it's good. These are good stories. Yeah, we'll see where we get next week. Thank you guys for joining us. Maybe we just gave you a little extra this week since we didn't give you any last week.
Yeah, we feel bad. We both feel really bad about that. So now you get extra.
And now they're like, guys, all right. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We will see you next time. Until then, as always, catechumens depart.